Hi, I'm Harrison Wyatt, and in today's video I'm going to be looking at identifying some of the local flora and fauna here on my campus woodland. So first of all, it goes without saying that silver birch is one of my favourite trees that we have in abundance here in my local woodland. It's really easily identifiable by the colour of its bark, but not only that, it strips away in features that are so easily peelable that these are great for firelighting and bushcraft sessions because of the oils that are carried within the bark of this tree. The second tree I'm looking at here is actually this young pioneer sycamore that seems to be growing out of the base of what was a slightly larger tree that's been cut away or uprooted perhaps in maybe some inclement weather. The sycamore is a classic star-shaped leaf, and these are really easily identifiable in the autumn months because they blanket the ground with beautiful range of colours from orange all the way through to purple. The third tree I'm looking at is holly, and I find this one fascinating because it has epigenetic modification. That's basically a fancy way of saying that it can change its leaves and its shape without changing its DNA. So this time of year now, these leaves have gone spiky, whereas only a few months back in the colder winter months, they were broader and flatter to get as much light as possible to help the tree grow. The reason for change is quite often observed in places where there are herbivores that might come and eat the lower leaves, whereas some of the larger top leaves may remain in that flatter standard approach. Just here on this holly tree, I can show you that quite up high, the leaves are still remaining relatively flat and large, which is a really interesting observation. The fourth tree I'm looking at is this beautiful white river willow that's really easily identifiable by its thin, narrow leaves and also its smooth bark and again, narrow branches. And also the formation in which willow grows. So looking over here, you can see it's actually growing out of this fantastic archway that we've got that's formed out of a fallen, twisted tree. But it's growing in abundance, almost coppicing out of these various different growths that have been cut away year on year. And it grows incredibly quickly, up tall as well, which is a fantastic thing to observe year on year. The fifth tree that I'm looking at here on our school site is a little bit more out in the open, but it's this beautiful old oak tree. It's identifiable first and foremost by its iconic oak tree shaped leaves with these lovely bumps, even though it's an early year. So it's still sort of late spring, and you can see there's actually the blossoms as well. But these leaves with the round bumps are really iconic for British nature. So yeah, this grand oak tree is just absolutely beautiful, and I do actually bring groups up here when we are doing identification sessions. Here in this conifer woodland of Mac Forest, I'm going to try and look at a few trees here and identify them as well. Utilising my charity shop bought book here, looking at the majority of the trees that have been planted, and these are some new young ones that have been put along the side of the path. My best guess is looking at the evidence as well of the cones that are on the floor, that these are a spruce. However, just behind them growing up there, looking at the pattern of the needles, that's more likely to be a larch, judging by the close proximity of the little patches of needles that are growing on the branches. And nestled right in here is also a gorse that's fighting for the sunlight, that I can see a few more that are growing just down the path over there with those iconic yellow flowers. The first plant I'm looking at are these beautiful annual flowering bluebells that are really, really iconic, and we're really lucky to have an abundance of these down in our local woodland. They are so identifiable for their purplish blue colour that comes out in force and just blankets the ground. And also, of course, the shape of their flowers that droop over like a dangling bell. The second flower I'm looking at here are dandelions. Now, these are fantastically nostalgic for me. Not only are they great and vibrant in that bright yellow lion's mane kind of shape and colour, but also they are a fantastic point of season of change, how you can see them one day and then a few more days later you can see them as a dandelion clock, and they've changed into that seeding pod that will blow away on the wind. and it just brings back an element of nostalgia, which is great to sort of inspire into a forest school setting. The third plant I'm looking at is nettles. Now, though they may not be the favourite of most, I actually love these nettles. And luckily, we also have an abundance of these down in our local woodland. They're really identifiable, not only by the fact that if you touch them, they'll sting you, but also their quad layout. They have pairs of leaves that alternate from side to side by 90 degrees. And the leaves themselves are that really iconic spiky layout. And then the stems of these plants are visibly sort of hairy or furry. Now, the reason that I love these so much is because, ironically, I suffer from hay fever. So when it comes to this sort of springtime, I actually go around and I very carefully pick the tops of these plants and harvest these top sections. I dry them out and I form them into a nettle tea, which is fantastically healthy. The fourth plant I'm looking at here are ferns. Now these I love because they just make me think of dinosaurs, which is great when you send a group out to go and look for them. From a very early age, children can identify these due to things like children's books and dinosaur books. They're splayed out pattern, but also their curling leaves, which I often say look a bit like a dinosaur's claw. These historic plants are really iconic. The fifth and final plant I'm looking at here is brambles. Now these are identifiable by their thorns, which is actually because they're part of the rubus or rose family plant. These are fruit bearing seasonally, which is really great to see as they come around going with a group and seeing what fruits can be collected. There's various different fruits that brambles can produce, such as raspberries, blackberries, dewberries, or bristleberries. So yeah, really, really great one to look out for. When it comes to being a forest school practitioner, I think it's so valuable to have a level of insight and knowledge when it comes to flora and fauna and being able to identify things. And I've come up with a list of 5 reasons why. First of all, it's to know what is poisonous and what's not poisonous, what is actually going to be safe to touch and be around or even look at or breathe near, versus what's going to be a dangerous space for yourself and other sort of participants to be in a space of. Secondly, it's knowing what's local to your area, knowing your own space, but in comparison to what's invasive, what species don't belong here for myself in the UK, what types of plants and animals might we need to stay on top of or control to maintain a healthy habitat. For example, a couple of years ago, as one of our outdoor sessions, we did some balsam bashing, which is an invasive plant species that actually flicks its seeds, so it scatters really, really sort of effectively, basically. So we had to pick them just at the right time. Third of all is seasonal abundance, knowing when things might not necessarily be all year round. But what things can you use or sort of rely upon as a resource for your bushcraft and forest school sessions, or what might you need to leave alone? What types of plants might we need to look after and make sure that we're thinking sustainably and in acting sort of conservation to make sure that we're looking after the space we're using. Fourth is thinking about your knowledge of bushcraft skills. So knowing, as I mentioned with the silver birch, knowing about oils in barks that can help for fire lighting, or plants that burn well, or potentially edible sort of fruits and berries and fungi, what is going to be safe to eat and sort of assist you in survival skills. But also sort of thinking about the historical side of that, it's taking that knowledge and keeping it alive through ourselves, and then finally sort of inspiring that into another generation. So as a practitioner, sort of giving that information and that insight on and inspiring other people to have a knowledge about the space that they're in or local to, which is absolutely fascinating. As a quick point of reference to sort of finish off this video, having been looking at different flora and fauna, I did, as advised, go to a few local charity shops, and I picked up for just £1 or £2 each some really lovely nature identification books, some special sort of UK based ones as well. But these are great not only for myself to kind of brush up on my learning, but also to hand out to groups and let them go and do some exploring and identification themselves, which is a really, really great session.